RC. My name is Rajat Sadana, one of the co-founders of e-GMAT. I'm going to be your main host today. In this webinar, we're going to talk about three key reading strategies that you need to master to ace GMAT RC. We're going to demonstrate what those strategies are. We're going to apply those strategies multiple times. My goal through this webinar will be to convince you to try these strategies on your own post this webinar. I'm able to convince you to give these strategies a fair shake, then I promise that then I will have done my job, and I promise that if you do give them a fair try, then you will find that your RC ability will improve drastically in as few as 4 to 5 days. Um, you might not reach the 90th percentile in 4 to 5 days, but you'd definitely be able to get to that 70th percentile, and you'll have a foundation to get to that 90th percentile in another 5 days or so. So with that, I want to understand from you guys just in terms of your target GMAT score and your current GMAT score. Let's uh, let's make sure I get those poll questions. Let's get this one. Which uh, which GMAT edition are you do you prefer? I mean, now we know a lot about both the focus as well as the current GMAT. Which one do you prefer? If you don't have a preference, you should mention that as well. Okay. All right, we have about half of you are looking at the current edition, and about 4% focus prefer the focus edition, and then about 40% do not have a preference. Again, remember, preference doesn't mean that what you're going to take. Many of you who are applying in round one will have to take the current edition because you don't have the focus edition available, but you might still prefer the focus edition over the current edition. So, so that's this. That's my question here. Then let's put in my next question. So what's your target GMAT score? Let's put this over here. All right. Now look at this group. I have about half of you who are in that 730 to 750 bracket, but 20% of you in that 760 or higher bracket, and another 20% in that 710, 720, and about 12% in the 600 to 700 bracket. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. And with regards to when do you guys plan to take the test, we have a good number of you who have more than 60 days before the test. About 70% who have between 46 to 60, and then we have actually 4 evenly spread groups, other than those who have more than 60 days. So I'm going to hide these polls here. And then before we go into the crux of this webinar, we have 2 free webinars. We have one on algebra. In this, we focus on inequalities and absolute value. If that's an area that you need help with, then definitely uh, register for this webinar. That's exactly 24 hours from now. And then next week, we have a free webinar on GMAT sentence correction. In this, we talk about the famous meaning-based approach that e-GMAT pioneered over a decade ago, and we're going to hear from Payal Tandon, who is my co-founder and the original inventor of the meaning-based approach. Okay, with that, let me hide this as well, and let's go into the webinar pane. So what you see over here is the webinar pane. The screen should have stabilized for you. If the screen has stabilized, you should be seeing GMAT Reading Comprehension. How do you get to that 90th percentile? Let me actually go just start with the webinar. First of all, if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn. I have upwards of 2,000 or 20,000 students who are connected with me on LinkedIn. If you want to connect with students at any top B school, you should be able to do that through me. Okay. Now, for those of you who are aiming for a score of 700 or higher, what should be your RC target RC ability? You can put those answers in your short answer pod over here. For those of you who are aiming for that score of 700 or higher, what should be your target RC ability? Yes. So for most people who are aiming for a score of 700 or higher, you should aim for at least 80th percentile. Once you get at 730, 90th percentile is what you should aim for, which means that you're looking to be in the top 10% of all test takers who take the GMAT. Okay. Um, and again, as I said, if you were aiming for that 730 or higher score, that 90th percentile is what you should aim for. So now I want you to tell me about your RC approach, and I'm going to put in another poll question over here. There are usually three ways in which people approach GMAT RC. One is they skim through the passage. They essentially look at the first and the last line. Usually they'll look at some places in the middle, but yeah, these are people who'd spend about 2 minutes looking, up to 2 minutes going through the passage. Then they'll look at questions, and then they'll spend about 5 to 6 minutes going through the questions. That's approach one. Approach two is where people look at the questions first and then go to the passage to find out where the details are, and then do that and get to the answer. And then approach three is where people invest their time early on in the passage. They just spend a considerable amount of time in that initial reading, and then once they're done with that, after spending up to 4 minutes on the passage, they look at the question and they go back to the passage only to confirm their answers, if at all. I have about 93 students. I only have about 53 responses so far. I'd prefer to get at least 65 responses. Which approach do you use? All right, so I have 61, 63, 65 responses. That's wonderful. Let me end the poll, broadcast results. Just give me 1 second. All right, here you can see the results. But 25% of you skim through the passage, but 9% of you approach the questions first, and then the majority of you, 66% of you, invest that time on the passage and then only go to questions. Approach number three is what we recommend. So for those of you who already follow approach number three, my goal will be to make sure that you get better at doing that, you get better at reading. We'll give you the tools to get there. But if you're following either approach one or two, my goal would be to motivate you enough to try approach three and do it the right way so that you improve faster. Okay. Now, I have another question over here. What level of understanding, and this is your own judgment, what level of understanding do you think you currently have when you read the passage before you start looking at the first question? So I have 4 categories here. You can choose whether it's less than 50%, between 50 and 75%, between 75 and 90, or between 90 and 100%. Again, I prefer to get about 65 responses or more if you can get more. Okay. But 58, 59 responses, 62. What is the level of understanding? And this is you're evaluating yourself. All right, I have more than 65 responses. Let me end the poll. And as you can see, majority of you are below that 75th percentile, but 34% of you are in that 75th percentile. Only 1% is, or one person is there in that 90th to 100%. First of all, kudos to you for participating wholeheartedly. That's wonderful. My goal with regards to this question is to put you on a journey where most of you are in that 90 to 100%, because truly, if you want to do well in hard GMAT RC passages, you need to get to that 90 to 100%. And a translation of that goal would be to really just make sure that I help you extract at least twice as much, and I use the word at least over here, from the passage, that as much as you do today. And then we'll do that by leveraging what we call as the reading strategies that we follow. And how will we do that? We'll first look at a small passage, and then we'll try and extract twice as much information. We'll then solve a main point question, and then an inference question, and then we'll apply what we've learned to a full-length RC passage. Now, through two small passages, we'll introduce and demonstrate these reading strategies. We'll also look at, once you absorb all of this information from the passage, how do you apply that to answer various kinds of questions? And then, as I said, we'll apply them on a full-length RC passage overall. Now, for all of this to work, this one thing which is really important is the right attitude for GMAT RC. I want you to remember one thing. GMAT RC is about a diverse set of topics, and it provides you with a tremendous opportunity that in 4 minutes you can learn something significant about a topic that you didn't know of. And if that's not rewarding, I don't know what is. I mean, 4 minutes of investment, and you'd know something about a topic that you were not aware of, and you know something really significant about it. So for all of this to work, the first thing that you should have is an attitude to get immersed and to learn something from the passage, because GMAT RC passages are really well crafted. And then that mindset to really say, I'm going to visualize whatever I read. If you don't have that mindset, if you don't have this attitude, then none of the strategies I'm going to talk about is they're going to work. Okay. Once you have that attitude, once you promise yourself you're going to have do that, then we're going to apply reading strategies, and we're going to have strategies where we'll understand, or where we'll apply them at an atomic level, which is where we'll apply them when we're reading a sentence, and we'll divide it into multiple chunks. We'll also use keywords. Keywords is one of the most important tools that you have in your arsenal, where we'll leverage keywords to really figure out what the author is likely going to say. And this is really powerful, because there are times when a GMAT RC passage will use constructs that you may not understand, but if you understand the preceding or the succeeding keywords, then you'd be able to understand what this construct is talking about, and then you'd be able to infer meanings from there. So we'll really look at that. And then one other thing that we want to do is we want to avoid our brain from getting overloaded. And so we deploy strategies to summarize and predict what's next. A lot of people ask questions when it comes to GMAT RC tutorials. Should you take notes? How much time should you spend reading the passage? What if I take a lot of time on the initial read? How will I make sure that I'm able to get to that 90th percentile? All these questions, while relevant, are not as important right now as you think. What's important is that you read to comprehend, which means that if you need to take notes, you take notes. If you need to really write down sentences, you do write down sentences. Because remember, improving and excelling in GMAT RC is about traversing a journey. And so there will be times when you take about 12 minutes to solve an initial RC passage, and that's absolutely okay, as long as you achieve high accuracy in your questions, and b, you're able to reject answer choices confidently. If you do that, what you're going to find is that within 4 to 5 days, those 12 minutes go down to 10, and then they go down to 8, which is the threshold for answering 4 questions, and then they'll go down to even 6 for a majority of passages. And this will happen while you maintain that accuracy, even for the most challenging passages. So again, should you be taking notes? If your brain tells you you should be taking notes because you need that to retain information, absolutely. Should you write complete sentences, or should you take shortcuts? you know if you can devise shortcuts, absolutely do that. You'll see me do some of that. But if you feel you need to take complete notes, you can do that. And trust me, as you solve your fifth, your seventh, your 10th passage, your brain will automatically tell you how to kind of reduce what you're writing down, how to kind of take notes less frequently, because you'll see constructs and logical aspects repeated. Okay. Bottom line is, go slowly if you truly want to excel. Okay. Now, one other thing that I want to talk about with regards to reading strategies is there are aspects that we want to be absolutely be sure about. One is, GMAT RC passages will present a lot of comparisons. Whenever you see a comparison, make sure you slow down, you understand what that comparison is. There are instances in GMAT RC passages where the author will present information versus where the author will give you a claim. Make sure you understand what's a claim. Make sure you understand where is it that the author is presenting information. Another thing which is really important to distinguish is between claims and evidence, because there are times when the author will present evidence and there are times where the author will use information that is already presented and draw claims on this. Those are that understanding of that structure is really important, because more often than not you'll see questions on those aspects. Again, if you focus on comparisons, if you focus on claims versus evidence, if you focus on understanding when the author is quoting someone versus giving his own opinion, then you're going to find your understanding of that GMAT RC passage will improve tremendously. You'll achieve that 90th percentile understanding um, quickly, and your ability to answer questions will be enhanced. You'll reject answer choices with a lot more confidence. Okay, so again, doing this requires a lot of persistence. It requires that you follow directions, and you go slowly, because you're actually changing how you do things, and the best way to change is to make sure that you go in a methodical way. Okay, now with that, I'm going to present a question to you. The first question is based on a single line passage. Take about a minute to read the passage. Put in your notes in the short answer pod, so that you have those with you, or so that I can see what you're doing with this. And here is the passage. I'm going to mute myself for about a minute, and then I'm going to give you a question. All right, guys, start typing your notes in the short answer poll and press enter once you're done. Your notes in, please. If don't say done, put in your notes, press enter. And the beauty about this is, as you're putting those notes in, you can see how from the same piece of information, different people extract different things. Some of which are correct, others are wrong. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong over here. It's just that if you're wrong, you know why you're going wrong. If you're right, you know why you're right, and you give yourself a pat on the back. But the goal over here is to improve. All right. With that, I'm going to give you your first poll question. Here is the poll question. Here is the passage in here once again. I'm going to hide this. Here is your poll. And I'm going to reduce the size so you can choose. All right. I have about 40, 55 responses, about 62 responses. Let's get to 65. I have 101 students in the webinar. All right. I have about 70 responses. That's wonderful. Let me end the poll. I'm going to broadcast the results. This is how you guys did. You can see, but half of you chose choice D. There was no choice C. I'm glad only one person did that. Um, 27% of you chose choice B, B for boy. Quite a few if you chose choice C as well. And then pretty much, I mean, no one chose choice A, and the most popular choice is choice D, D for delta. So let's see how we will solve this. I'm going to actually just hide this one over here because we don't need this anymore. All right. So, and I'm going to bring my short answer pod as well. Bordering on the extreme, one definition of ethnocentrism. What is the importance of bordering on the extreme? When you read that, what did you extract from this piece? Okay, it's a far-fetched definition. It's an informed opinion. Okay, it's the worst case. All right, it's an extreme scenario. Author might be. What is it over here? Is it ethnocentrism or the definition? So lots of good things. What is author? When you say author might be against it, so first, then in your thing, what is this entity it here? It's the definition, yes. So first of all, we don't know whether the author is against it or not, but then whatever this refers to, this is referring to that definition, not EC. And some of you gave a fantastic response where you said, "Hey, this is the author is somewhat critical." Folks who said far-fetched, that is an excellent response. So what the author is saying is bordering on the extreme. One definition, and look at how the words that the author uses. One definition. He's not saying the definition. He's saying one possible definition of ethnocentrism, or let's call it EC because there are no brownie points for pronouncing it correctly. Considers it an a schismatic in-group out-group differentiation. So some of you may be saying, hey, what the hell does a schismatic mean? And there are certain words on GMAT RC that will make you wonder why the hell are they there. Don't worry about them, read through them. As long as you infer the content around it, you'll be able to extract the meaning. Schismatic means systematic. In-group, out-group differentiation. There's some sort of differentiation, and in which internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in-group are correlated with, really important keyword, correlated with a state of hostility toward outgroups which are often perceived as subhuman and or incorporation of evil. So really long sentence, you've got to slow it down. So what's going on over here? The author really says, hey, there's an exaggerated definition that's presented over here, and of EC, in which there's some differentiation where love for your own people is linked with hatred for those outside. Okay, and why do we say it's linked? Because we say they're correlated with. So these are things that happen together, that they often occur together or so. So when you think about this, what the author is doing is the author presents one definition of EC. It may not be a definition that he or she agrees with, but it's one definition of EC, and the author indicates that it's an exaggerated definition, and as per this definition, these two things happen together, or they're linked in some way. Their love for your own people and hatred for outside. Okay, so then let's talk about the answer choices. So the question asks, what is the main purpose of this? And let's go through the answer choices. Choices is to criticize a concept that encourages hostility. Um, Bordering on the extreme means exaggerated. This is this is bordering on, which means it's an extreme definition. It may not be a true definition. Okay, it's a good question. So choice A is wrong, and it's wrong for two reasons. One is because the author doesn't criticize the concept of EC. The author doesn't say whether it's good or bad. The author is merely presenting information to you. And then the second thing is we don't know that, as per this, that the EC encourages hostility towards outgroup. This is the definition of EC. EC doesn't cause hostility. Okay. And for these two reasons, choice A is wrong. Choice B says to evaluate the concept of EC while enlisting its various features. Now, Evaluation means to present the pros and cons of something. Does the author present pros and cons of EC? Does the author present pros and cons of EC? No. The author doesn't say here's what's good about EC, here's what's not so great about EC. Okay. Now, does the author present the various features of EC? No, the author is just giving a definition. Okay, it doesn't really say, hey, EC has feature one, feature two, feature three, and because of these two reasons, the author neither presents pros and cons of EC nor lists the various aspects or features of EC. This is why choice B is wrong. Folks who chose choice B, is that clear to you? But a quarter of you chose choice B. Do you understand why choice B is wrong? And if you do understand, tell me, why did you make a mistake? And what is it that you're going to do to make sure you avoid repeating this mistake? Ishwari says for option A, but the tone in which it's written, when should be considered? So I don't know how would you get the tone aspect of it. Okay, criticizing something saying means say this thing is saying this thing is bad. You're actually, a criticism is a subset of evaluation. Evaluation includes pros and cons. A criticism just mentions cons. Okay, so does, and we're talking about choice A again. Does the author mention any cons of 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 EC? Ishwari, does the author mention any cons of EC in the passage? Here is the passage once again, and others can really also say this. Does the author mention any cons? Where the author says, hey, EC is bad because of this, this, and that. No. And for those of you who chose choice A, uh, not even indirectly, he doesn't mention it. You can't infer from this that the author is against EC. Okay. And if you're thinking like that, then you're just reading too much into the passage. Uh, you're allowing your opinion of what something is to color your understanding of the information. Okay, feature versus definition. Okay, let's kind of look at this over here. I think we should write a mini article on feature versus definition. Let's look at this. I think I'm going to do this. So smartphone. The first statement is a definition. The second one actually is a list of features. Okay, so that's kind of the difference between a definition, and then the passage clearly tells you what's a definition. That it's a definition. Choice C says to define the concept of EC, which leads to hierarchy among social groups. Okay. Now, the author here presents a definition. It's not the definition that the author believes in. He actually explicitly states that it's an extreme definition, indicating that the author might not consider it to be the most well balanced definition. Okay. The second aspect which is there is that there's nothing in this piece of information that says that EC leads to hierarchy. Okay. So because of this, choice C is wrong. All right. Let's look at choice D. Choice D says to introduce the concept of EC by presenting a view on it. And with this, we can definitely say yes, the author has introduced the concept of EC, and then the author does present a view on that introduction, which is that hey, this is an extreme view of EC, or this is an extreme definition, which is what makes choice D correct. Okay. So with that, I'm going to just show the question once again. Here is the passage. Here is the question. Um, what are your takeaways? And guys, please put the question in the Q&A pod, not in the short answer pod. Okay. Um, okay. And so what were your takeaways? If you could put those questions, put those answers in the short answer poll. Why did you make mistakes? And what were your takeaways? If you could put that, then I think it will help us. Bordering on the extreme is exaggerated. There's nothing to explain. To define, okay, please write down your learnings over here on the short answer pod, which is on the right hand side. I have few questions. What is the difference between define and introduce? To define means where the author is really just saying this is what EC is. To introduce means to say, hey, this is one way to look at EC. So now an introduction means that prior to reading this passage, most of you probably had no idea of what EC was. After reading this passage, you guys have an idea of what EC could be. So you're introduced to the concept of EC. Okay. Is it to present a definition? Is it the same as to define? Absolutely not. To define means that the author is presenting a definition that he or she believes in. And to present a definition means that the author is merely communicating information. Okay. Ron says, so we cannot read too much into it. No, please do not. What if we are asked to infer from the passage? Can we put our view in that case? Absolutely not. Information. The next question actually is going to be an inference question. So you'll learn about inference from this. Okay. Evaluate pros and cons. Look out for words in answer choices. Understand what the author is implying overall. Definition versus evaluation versus features. Got intimidated by the long sentence and ended up skimming through it. Okay, good. This is a really good list. Try to comprehend the passage better. So keep this list with you and apply it on the next short passage that we will see. How did we really say that the author is talking about love for own people? When you think about relative peace, solidarity, devotion to the in group, that's love for your own people in short terms. If you're doing all of this, it's love for your own people. Okay. All right. Here's the reason why people make mistakes. They forget to visualize. They skim through the passage. They do this quickly. The second thing is, how many of you, when you read an answer choice, really said, ask yourself, is this correct? Is this wrong? Without understanding what the answer choice was actually saying. How many of you did that? Again, how many of you just read the answer choice and said, is this correct? Is it wrong? Without asking yourself, what is the answer choice actually saying? And then evaluating whether this is right or wrong. Many people make this mistake. In fact, I've seen experts make this mistake too. Really, really important. When you read an answer choice, first understand what the answer choice is. What does introducing something mean? What does defining something mean? What does correlation mean? What does causality mean? What does criticism mean? That's really important. And that's where you have to do that visualization, not only for the passage, but also um, for answer choices. Okay. Now, many of you probably did not do this because the question stem here was fairly simple. But as we go through the full length passage, you will see that that the test also adds complexity in the question stem, where people don't make mistakes because they don't understand the question stem. This probably didn't happen over here. Okay. All right. Ishwari has a great point. It's a great question. She says, and choice A, um, and Ishwari, you are on choice A, right? When you say, she's saying, hey, the author says bordering with the extreme in his passage. So he's already presenting an opinion. So why is choice A wrong? Who would like to answer this question? And I'm going to actually put a response here. I'm going to share her question with everyone. Who wants to answer this? And here is the passage again. So everyone can see Ishwari's question. Eh, Okay, one of the definition, one of many. Okay. All right. Remember, I said always visualize the answer choice that's given to you. So Ishwari, in the short answer part, to criticize a concept. When we say a concept, which concept is this answer choice referring to? Which concept is this authorized? Or agreed, extreme doesn't mean criticizing, absolutely. But even before that, it's referring to EC. Does the author present any opinion about EC in this passage? Does the author present any opinion about EC? Yes or no? No, absolutely not. The only thing that he's presenting opinion on is the definition. That this is an extreme definition. So when the author says this is an extreme definition, first of all, you can't infer that the author is criticizing that definition in strict terms. Um, okay. The second thing is the author is actually not criticizing the concept. He's not. He doesn't give any opinion on what EC is. Okay. And this is where it's really important to understand to translate and visualize the answer choice, because if you don't do that, you may have this kind of a doubt, and it's really good to get these questions out overall. Okay, guys, you want to go to question number 2. We are recording this webinar, so you can go through it again, but let's go through question number 2. Okay, but the key thing which is there is, remember that you read with intent, and always internalize information, break big sentences into smaller chunks, leverage keywords, and then summarize those chunks. Okay, with that, let's go to question number 2. Again, you know the drill. Read the passage, summarize, and put your summary in the short answer part. Here is the passage. Okay, guys, I want you to put your summary in there. I want a few more summaries. I'm going to give you 15 more seconds. All right, you can see the various kinds of opinions that people have. That's excellent. Keep that over here, and then let's move forward. I'm going to now present a poll question, and and thank you for that participation. That's wonderful. So now we're going to see question number 2. Let's Here is the poll question. If 20, 30 of you would select still solving, so that I don't call on time. So if you select still solving, once I get 30 people who select still solving, then I'm going to show the question. And when you choose an option other than still solving, I know that I can call time. So I have 24 people, 25, another few 30, another 3 or 4 folks to say still solving. That's wonderful. Don't choose choice A because you don't know whether choice A is going to be correct. I haven't still shown the answer choices. So here is the question. All right, about 70% of the class is done. Let's get those answers in. Okay, 85% is done, but 90% of you are done. 5, 4, 3. Come on, choose an answer choice. I still have 5 people who are not done. 2 and 1. I'm going to end the poll. One thing that I'll tell you guys is that, if you're here, if you're spending time, participate, because that's the best way to know when you're doing things right and why you're doing things right, and when you're doing things wrong, and why you make mistakes. And when you get feedback on in either case, you improve, because if you're doing things correctly, you become more confident, and if you're making mistakes, you figure out why you're making mistakes. Again, our goal is to reinforce good habits. So as you can see, we have a split theory. Now we have a lot of people like choice A, a lot of people like choice B, a lot of people like choice E. A few of you also like choices C and D. And the question is fairly simple. It's an inference question, so it's a standard question. It's a very popular question type. All right. So with that, before I do this, I want to ask you another question. And this is a really important concept overall, which is tested very frequently in GMAT RC. So here's a passage which says the color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on moods of people. I want you to tell me, what can you infer from this? What can you infer from the statement? One is some people regard the color blue as soothing. The second is the color blue is soothing. The third is either one of them, or both of the above statements. What can you infer from this? I have 65 responses. That's about, yeah, 64 responses, 66 responses. I'm going to end this poll. I'm going to broadcast results. 62% of you got it right. When you say the color blue is considered to have a soothing effect, what you can infer is that there are a few folks who consider, or some people who consider, the color blue as soothing. You cannot say the color blue is soothing because this is not the information presented in the passage is not author's opinion. It's the opinion of some people. The author is merely communicating information. Okay, we rarely don't know if the color blue is indeed soothing. Okay, Is that clear? I'm going to put in a yes no poll over here. Is that clear? Okay, that's wonderful. And this is a really important concept that's tested again and again on GMAT RC. In fact, in some instances, it's tested in SC as well as in CR. Okay. Now, if the author indeed wanted to say that the color blue is soothing, he would have expressed the same piece of information this way. All right. Clear all answers. Okay. Now let's look at this. Ethnocentrism, or EC and its canonical variants, are deemed to be, which means are considered to be, intimately connected with xenophobia. Let's call it XP. What is xenophobia? A complex attitude to come sentiment structure involving aversion slash dislike and antagonism vis-a-vis the strange or the alien. And okay, so what the author really says is EC and its canonical variants are considered to be intimately connected to XP. So there are some people who consider that EC and XP are closely connected. What is XP? XP is all of this over here. All right, this is what XP is. Some sociocultural anthropologists even considered. Can you tell me what's the value of this even over here? Why does the author use even? Why does the author use even? What point does the author want to stress? One step further, absolutely correct. Not contrast, even. It says there are some people. So in the first sentence, the author says EC and its variants are considered to be intimate. So some people consider EC and XP to be closely connected. And then the author is saying there are some folks who also consider EC and XP to be so closely connected that they could be considered practically the same, which opposite side of the same coin mean practically the same. So the author really says that connection is so close that some people consider them to be practically the same thing. Okay, so that's why the author uses the word even to to emphasize on the extent of closeness. Okay, but as a contrast word, a few voices have cautioned that this need not be the case. So there are a few other voices that have really said, hey, they may not be as close. So let's not generalize that closeness to and call them opposite sides of the same coin. So what does the author do? Um, so the author first presents the opinion of some people where it says EC is some people consider EC to be closely connected to XP, where XP is hatred for aliens. And then the author really says some people take that connection closeness to that extreme, where they say that these things practically are the same, but some other folks agree to this extent of closeness. Is that clear to everyone? This is what you take from the passage. Is this clear? Is this clear to you? Yes, no? All right. Somewhat. Okay. Which aspect is not clear? So, what does the author do? The author here defines this new term called XP, and it says some people consider them to be extremely closely connected. Then the author defines what XP is, and then it says some people consider them to be so closely, even more closely connected, that they consider them to coexist, whereas some other people really say, hey, the connection is close, but you can't take them to be so close that they that you call them as coexistence or coexisting. All right. Now with that, uh, the last but, this but, is this a counter? That's a great question. Is it a counter to extreme closeness or the first line? When you think about this, that this need not be the case. What does this word, what does this, what does this refer to here? What does this refer to? Opposite sides, yes. Extreme closeness. Not this part, not the first part. not the first part, but it is opposite sides of the same coin. So this is what it refers to. Okay. And again, you get that because of the position of this fragment. The word but is right after that. Okay. Now, what's an inference? An inference in an RC passage is always from the point of view of the author, which means something that the author believes in 100%. My way of looking at inference is to really say, if I would bet $100 that the author would 100% agree with it, then I would mark that answer choice. That's the definition of inference. Okay. Now, let's look at this. Here is how you guys polled. Choice A was really popular. 21% of you chose choice A. Choice A says XP and EC are different facets of the same concept. Now, this piece, many of you've gotten it from this intimate connection. However, this is not the author's opinion. This is the opinion of some people, and hence, because it's not the author's opinion, we can't infer this. People who chose choice A, do you understand why you made a mistake? People who chose choice A. And for those of you who've forgotten what you chose, this is the poll once again. Okay. The canonical variants of EC are closely connected. The reason why this is wrong is the same reason why choice A is wrong, that this is a deemed view or a considered view. This is not the author's view. All right. And because of which choice B is wrong. People who chose choice B, is that clear? Choice C is the opposite view. They're not connected with each other. We can't really say that. In fact, the entire passage is written to kind of prove the degree of their connection. All right. So we can't, there's no way you can infer that they're not connected with each other. All right. And again, the author doesn't agree or disagree with this. Choice D talks about causality. Does this passage talk about causality at all? I mean, this was reasonably popular. No, there's no way you can really say that that choice D talks about causality. Okay, which brings us to our correct answer, which is XP entails dislike towards the strange. This is the only place where the author has presented his opinion, this from here to here. And from here, you can really infer that XP entails dislike towards the strange. This is what the author agrees with. Why? Because the author defines XP. And this is a really common structure that you'd see in many RC passages. In fact, this is something that you will see in a lot of uh, uh, SC and CR passages as well. Let's look at this statement here. Washing hands, a process that kills 90% of bacteria, is considered to limit the spread of COVID-19. What can you infer from above, from this sentence? Yeah. What can you infer? What you can infer is that washing hands kills a lot of bacteria. You can also infer that some people consider washing hands as a means to to limit the spread of COVID-19. This is a good inference. One. Second piece is some, right? You can also infer that statement. Okay. You cannot infer 10% of bacteria cannot cause COVID. because we don't know that. And also remember, this is to limit the spread. Okay. So choices A and B, both of them would have been correct had we said some people consider XP and EC as different facets of the same concept. Some people consider the canonical variants of EC to be closely connected with XP. The author doesn't believe in it, but definitely some people believe in it. Okay. Now, someone really said, hey, choice E looked extremely straightforward, so I rejected it. And a lot of you have this opinion that, hey, if you're talking about inference, it cannot be directly stated in the passage. How many of you think that? If it's inference, it cannot be directly stated in the passage. Okay. Okay. First of all, the definition of inference is what is 100% true as per the information given in the passage. So do not reject any answer choice, which may seem like, oh, this is a rephrase of what's given in the passage. No, if an answer choice contains information that is 100% true as per the passage, always select this. All right. This is not what the GMAT tests you on. All right. Here's a great question. It's a, what if some people believe, why should it be the inference? Okay. Does the author believe that some people believe this? Does the author believe if we added some people, would it agree with the author's belief? Yes or no? We added some people to this. Why not? The author would not pass information if some people didn't believe it. When the author is saying EC and its canonical variants are deemed to be, this means some people consider this to be, right? Think about it. When the author is passing this information, this information is valid. There are a few folks who consider that to be the case. So yes, the author believes that some people consider EC and XP to be intimately connected. Otherwise, he wouldn't mention it. Is that clear? Okay. Again, great questions. How do we know that the definition of XP is the author's definition? Oh, I mean, I just showed you the sentence structure. Let's go over here. Washing hands, a process that kills 90% of bacteria. Who's explaining washing hands? It's the author. It's the right. So that's why, and that's where understanding sentence structure is really important, because you can really, if you don't do that, you can't differentiate between what the author believes in versus where the author is merely communicating information. Okay, and this is where uh, you when you want to extract 2x as much from the passage as you currently do, this is what you need to be able to do. Okay. Again, the reason why people make a mistake is one of these three. If you fix these, there's no reason why you would make a single mistake in GMAT RC. And I would say this for RC more than for CR or SC, because SC you have, sometimes you have those rules where which may confuse you. In CR, you have to go outside the argument. But in RC, you stay within the passage as long as you read properly, as long as you understand what the various question types mean. There's no reason why you should make any mistake in RC. So should you consider any definition in the passage as inference? An inference is what the author would 100% agree with. Okay, if you think a piece of information that's there in the answer choices is something that the author would 100% agree with, it is a valid inference. That's it. It's nothing more complicated than that. It doesn't get any simpler. But to achieve, to get to that 90th percentile ability, you have to have that intent. You have to have that immersion in the passage. Okay, Really important. And thank you very much for writing down those takeaways. You guys are imbibing those good habits that I want you to. Harshita is asking the question, I tend to get lost in long sentences. What can be done to comprehend them quicker? So, first of all, Harshita, really important when you think about improvement, you have to think of improvement in stages. So, don't worry about quicker, worry about understanding long sentences. As you get better at understanding long sentences, your timing will fall in place. Okay. Now, how do you understand long sentences? This is what's going to help you understand long sentences. Break them down. Make sure you connect them to the information that you've read and predict information coming forward. How do you predict that information? You focus on keywords. And then to be able to do this consistently, you need to make sure that your brain's not overloaded, which is where you need to summarize and make notes, step back and really say, what did I just read? Okay. Do that and you're going to find life becomes a lot easier. All right, are you guys ready to read the full length to solve the full length passage? Apply all of these strategies on a proper full length passage. All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you about 3.5 minutes to read this passage. All right, I'm not going to present any questions, and then I'm going to give you 5 questions. This is an official passage, so make sure you read it carefully. This is a 700 level passage, and if you do a good job reading it, I'm hoping to see some improvement or good accuracy in the questions that follow. Right. So I'm going to put in a yes no poll over here. When you're done reading, you can select yes. Okay. Why don't you select no for now? Let's get about 40 people to select no. That way you guys time yourself, I won't time you. And again, you'll have the passage for your reference later on, but I want you to give it a real thoroughly read, take notes. So about 4 minutes. All right. So here is the passage. Actually, I think it's much better on notes pane. Let's have this over here. I think the font's much better here. All right, I'm going to mute myself for 4 minutes. All right, about 75% of you are done. Let's get a few more. And while you're doing that, I am going to reduce the size because we're going to do poll questions after this. So you guys can scroll through this. And let's go into question number 1. My apologies. I want you to select still solving. Let's get 30 people to select still solving before I show the question. 27, 28, 29, one more person. Here is the first question. But 90% of you are done. Let's get those answers in. 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. Broadcast the results. You can see how you guys polled. Now we're going to go to question number 2. You guys know the drill by now. Select still solving, and then I'm going to show the question. I see 30 people select still solving. 27, 29, 30. Great. We remove broadcast results. Here is your question number 2. All right, 80% of you are done. Let's get those answers in. 90% of you are done. That's great. 3, actually 80% are done. Sorry, 85. Now 90% are done. 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. Broadcast the results. This is how you guys did. Let's go to Q3. Again, we're going to follow the same process. Here is the question. Good luck, guys. All right, about 80% of the class is done. Let's get those answers in. 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll and broadcast results. This is how you guys did. Choice C was really popular. Actually, choice C was the only popular choice. Other than that, it was choice A, which was somewhat popular. Here's question number 4. You guys know what to do. Come on, 30 people. Select still solving. 3, 2, and 1. Let me remove broadcast results. Yeah. Here is the poll question. Good luck, guys. Right, 90% of you done. 3, 2, and 1. End the poll. Broadcast the results. Choices C and D are really, really popular. Um, with that, let's go to last question, which is choice E. Let's get to still solving. Come on, 30 people should choose still solving. All right. With that, here is the question. Good luck, guys.
All right, everyone's done. Three, two, and one. Let me end the poll. Broadcast results, choices A, B, excuse me, A, B, C, and D are all pretty popular. That's good. Okay, I'm gonna hide this. I'm gonna hide this as well. How do you feel about this passage? We clear all answers. How do you feel about this passage? Pretty confident. That's good. Tough. Okay. Interesting. This passage is essentially it's a beautiful example of of the usage of keywords. It's a passage that has enough meat in it so that you can learn something new, and it's described in a fairly complete form. Okay, so if you get this passage, this is what it's very representative of the kind of passages that you would see if you want to go from that 70th to that 90th percentile. This represents the meat of those passages overall. So let's go through this and see how the author has constructed his opinion over here. Let's start with this. F&M assert that let me I'm going to clear our answers, that medical research could be improved by. So the first thing over here is we use the word, see the word F&M insert, which means that this isn't the author's opinion, it's someone else's opinion. And who are they? Frazier and Mosteller. Let's call them F&M. That and the moment we see that, we say, okay, there's someone else's opinion, and that's about medical research. Medical research could be improved by moving toward larger, simpler clinical trials of medical treatments. So the first line, when you read this, you say, okay, it's an assertion by someone, it's a suggestion by someone, and it's about improving medical research. And how? If the word is by describes how we move towards larger, simpler clinical trials of medical treatments. Then the author says, currently, again, this is a really important keyword, researchers collect far more background information on patients than is strictly required for their trials. Far more is a comparative term. Remember, I said always be wary of comparisons. They're really critical. Understand, visualize what they say. So what the author is saying is, in terms of current practice, um, researchers collect a lot of information, and far more means that it just seems like that's more than something. What is it more than? It's much more than what hospitals collect. And there's a result of this. Thereby is another keyword. It shows an outcome, thereby escalating costs of data collection, uh, storage, and analysis. Okay, so this over here, yes, it's an author's opinion. It's also what F&M are currently saying. Although limiting information collection could increase the risk that researchers will overload facts relevant to study. So this is the author is this is what we call as the classic defense against weakener. Although is a contrast keyword and say, hey, if you limit information collection, you think that you overlook something when you're doing some drug research. F&M contend. So again, it's not the author's contention, but F&M's contention that such risk, never entirely eliminable, would be small in most studies. Then we're continuing. Only is a really important keyword, which means just in this category, in research of entirely new treatments or new and unexpected variables likely to arise. Okay, so that's the first piece over here. Now, what's going on in this first piece? So the first is as per FNM, medical research could be improved, and you see the short form improved means an up arrow by going towards larger, simpler trials. Currently, this is what happens, and this leads to increase of costs. And then there's a there is a potential negative of collecting less data, but that's the overlooking the risk of overlooking facts relevant to the study. But again, that risk is extremely small and it can't be removed. Only in that specific research is the risk are new variables likely to arise. So essentially, the crux of this passage is that the author describes the proposal which talks about the benefits of a simpler trial. Now, how do you easily differentiate the author's view and others' view? So, first of all, there is no easy way of doing it. Let me just be very clear. I'm not going to tell you a trick which says, "Hey, this is going to work 100% of the time." That's not how we sell our products. We don't teach you tricks. At the same time, if you read enough passages where you read with a mindset to really say, if this is what someone else is saying and this is what um, the author is saying, you're going to be able to understand this fairly easily. And it's and when you think about learning these skills, it's not just about applying these skills when you're doing ours. It's about applying these skills in your day-to-day life, because I bet you guys write a lot, and when you write, you always have to make a decision as to when you're writing to really say, I believe such as the case, or someone else. So where you're actually presenting your opinion, where and where you're actually just communicating information, where you say, hey, as per X, Y, and Z, this is the right approach, and where you're not putting your weight behind it. Okay, so there's no easy way to do it, but if you read and comprehend, you'd really see, okay, first sentence definitely by FNM, second definitely by author, currently researchers, blah 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 blah. Here FNM content, it's clearly mentioned when someone can you know where the author is presenting information. The important thing and the critical thing over here is being involved in the passage, and if you're involved in the passage, you will see this. Okay. Now let's go to the second paragraph. FNM propose. Again, remember, there's a second part of the proposal. Not only will always be combined with but also, which means there are two things. Not only that researchers limit data collection on individual patients, but also that researchers enroll more patients. So this is the second recommendation. Thereby, again, you can see the thereby means an outcome. As a result of this, what's going to happen is obtaining a more representative sample of the total population. Again, you can see the word more used in a comparative sense over here. More representative than what's probably currently done of the total population with the disease under study. Often is used as what's the regular practice, what's the current practice, or what's a frequent practice. Often researchers restrict study participation to patients who have no ailments besides those being studied. So this is what the current practice is, or what's practiced very frequently. And then you say a treatment judged successful under these conditions can then, which means the word then tells you this is a two-step process. First we do this, then we do this, can then be evaluated under normal conditions. So in this, FNM is giving another proposal. They say, hey, in addition to collecting less data, let's kind of increase the size. That way, we kind of get a more representative sample of the total population. And currently, they really say, hey, we only focus on a very specific set. And then once we see something works for the specific set, we then broaden the range of participants. Okay. Then the author says, broadening the range of participants. FNM suggests, it's another way where the author is presenting information. Broadening the range of trial participants, FNM suggests, would enable researchers to evaluate. Again, another important keyword. Evaluate means finding out pros and cons. Um, uh, a treatment's efficacy for diverse patients under various conditions, and to evaluate its effectiveness for different patient subgroups. Now, a lot of people, when they read technical or complex information, they put their ingenious brain on, where they try and comprehend the 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 minute details of the technical aspects of it. How many of you tend to do that? Say, I'm going to get into the technicalities of things, I'm going to get to the minute details of it. How many of you, for example, read this uh, 3 to 4 times to really figure out what this was? Okay. Again, remember, when you're doing GMAT RC, your goal is to read like a manager and read like a leader, not read like an engineer, because frankly, there are engineers who read like an engineer. Your goal is to extract the crux out of it, as to what opinions are presented, which one of them is the author's opinion. But your goal is not to understand the nuts and bolts of it. Why? Because again, as a leader, you're not going to be involved in the nuts and bolts. Okay. So FNM suggests would enable researchers to study your treatment efficacy for a diverse set. So it says you'd be able to evaluate how good the treatment is for various kinds of patients, is all I would say. And then I would focus on, for example, so this is examples of the benefits. The value of a treatment for a progressive disease. Again, don't worry about what a progressive disease is. Consider it to be a kind of disease. May vary according to the patient's stage of disease. So it says whether the disease is advanced or it's not. Patients' ages may also affect a treatment's efficacy. So there are two ways and two examples over here where you'd get additional insights by enrolling a broad set of participants. Okay, that's what it is. Again, read like a manager, not like an engineer. Focus on getting busy with the right kind of information overall. So when you think about this, what's going on? You're proposing a couple of ways to improve medical research, and we're explaining that proposal. The first is to make the trial simpler, not collect a whole lot of data, collect less data, and to reduce cost. Okay, and the second is to expand the list of trial participants to get a more representative group and the benefits of that. So in this case, the author has presented a proposal for changing two aspects of medical trial, and he's presented the benefits of those. Okay. So another way to look at this is you have a two-pronged approach to improve medical research. That's something that's explained. All right, with that, let's kind of look at how you guys polled over here. This is question one. This is how you guys polled. Half the class got it right. That is really good. So the what's the primary purpose? What's the main idea? Choice A is wrong. Why? Because it says identifying two practices that may affect the accuracy of trials. There's nothing that tells us that it will affect the accuracy of trials. The first practice talks about reducing the amount of data collection. The second is to add more participants. And again, remember, the goal over here is not to identify the two practices, to really say, hey, out of 10 practices, these are the two that make the most sense. The author is merely explaining these two practices. Okay. Describing aspects of medical research that tend to drive up costs. Again, this is explained in the first part, but again, it's this is what we call as partial scope. The entire passage talks about a bunch of other things. Choice C, it says evaluating something. What? An analysis of certain shortcomings of current medical practices. Does the author talk about the pros and cons of the analysis? Does the author evaluate any analysis here? Yes? No. The author doesn't talk about the pros and cons of FNM's research. Does the author do that? Does the author say, hey, this is where FNM's research makes sense, this is where it doesn't make sense? No, the author doesn't do that. Yes, the drawbacks of the current systems are mentioned, but is there an evaluation of those of that analysis of the current system? Does the author evaluate this analysis? Absolutely not. Do you guys understand what evaluating an analysis is? Do you guys understand what evaluating an analysis is? Okay. No. Yeah, positive and negative of what? Pros and cons of what? Of the current practices or the analysis? The current practices or the analysis? Evaluating an analysis means finding the pros and cons of the analysis. Okay. So let's say, let me explain this. Let's say you have a stock analyst who who analyzes. And this analyst creates a report. Now, if you understand this now, let's say an analyst analyzes Google stocks and he creates an analysis of a stock report. Now, if you really look at that stock analysis and say, this is where the analyst did a good job, this is where he faltered, this is where he could have explained a few more points, that's evaluating an analysis. You're not giving your opinion on whether Google is a buy or not. You're not doing that. Is there just one person who's understood this? It's like reading a book review. Absolutely, yes. And if you falter on something like this, then you're going to falter on difficult bold-faced questions. Every answer choice in a difficult bold-faced question is a second and third degree. What does analysis mean? What does analysis mean? Many of you do analysis. Yes, that is correct. So here, if there were pros and cons about the analysis of researchers, then this would have been the true choice. Absolutely. Yes, you now got it. Can you really see how visualizing answer choices makes life a lot easier? Okay. This is why choice C is wrong. Choice D is our correct option. Half of you got it. Describing proposed changes to the ways in which clinical trials are conducted. Yes, you know, um, we are talking about proposed changes, and the author describes those proposed changes over here. Okay, so that's something that's there. Choice E is wrong. Why? Choice E says explaining how medical researchers have traditionally conducted clinical trials and how such trials are likely to change. The word likely is an important keyword. Do we know that's how these trials are likely to change? Absolutely not. Okay. So that's something that's it. The other thing that you have to look at is when you think about this passage, is that the main idea of the passage to really describe how the research is traditionally done, or is the main idea to describe a proposal by someone? And you look at this, you say it's about describing a proposal. It's not how about explaining how medical research is currently done. Again, when you look at an answer choice, the same piece, evaluate or visualize the answer choice by itself to really say, what is this answer choice saying? And then figure out uh, whether the passage is in sync with the with what the answer choice is saying. Okay. Let's go to question number 2. I'm going to clear your answers over here. Let's just show what you guys have done in question number 2, how you guys polled. Here is how you guys polled. Choice A was, I think, is the correct answer. Half of you got this. Choice D was really popular. I think I'm going to focus my energy on choices A and D. The question says, what can be inferred from the passage about a study of category of patients referred to in the lines often researchers restrict study participation to patients with no ailments besides those being studied. So this is about that those ideal studies where we're choosing patients who have just the ailment that we want to study but no other ailments. And this is the part of the passage that covers that. A treatment that's successful under these conditions can then be evaluated under normal conditions. Okay, so in other words, what you can infer is that the results of these such studies are limiting. They need, or the second thing you can infer is, before going to market, you need a second of follow-up study to figure out. Okay, which is where choice A fits the bill. Okay, very few people chose choice B. I'm not going to go over there. Let's look at choice D. A lot of you chose choice D. Choice D says it would allow researchers to limit information collection without increasing the risk. People who chose choice D are confused between the first proposal that FNM present and the second proposal. This aspect was a part of the second proposal. Limiting information collection was a part of the first proposal. You cannot mix them. Those are two independent proposals. Okay. In this context, we do not talk about data collection. Okay. So hopefully this was clear. Let's look at question number 3. Question number 3 is a very interesting question. Let's see how you guys polled. Again, this one I think had the highest accuracy. 63% of you got it right. Only choice E was, and choices A and E was somewhat popular. Let's look at those. It can be inferred that a study limited to patients like those in these lines would have the following advantages. Now, when you read this question, the first thing which comes to mind is, we're talking about drawbacks of the study. How do I figure out advantages? And when you think about this, this is where you've got to get to answer choices and really say, will this study have that advantage? Or in other words, translating this question to, to, to simpler terms, what we are really saying is, what's the advantage of current way of doing things? Okay. Remember, we're talking about the advantage of this piece where we're restricting participation to patients who have no other ailments versus, where we pretty much enroll in everyone in. Okay. So you can see this. I'm going to go through this and look at the answer choices here. It would yield more data and the findings would be more accurate. Remember, there's no accuracy discussion happening over here, so that's not relevant. Costs are not discussed in this context. Choice C is the correct answer. Why? Because it definitely would limit the number of variables you have to study. Why? Because we are only talking about patients who have no other ailments besides this. That study would the analysis over there would be much more simple than what the analysis would be if you were to enroll a large number of participants. Okay, subgroups are not discussed with regards to this. Experimental treatments for average patients are not discussed. I mean, the word experimental treatment is not even there. And I think this is where a lot of people who chose choice A or choice D or E, they kind of went beyond the scope of the passage. They saw what we call as terms which are familiar, words which are familiar to what's there in the passage, and they said, maybe this is the correct answer because I remember this term being mentioned in the passage. How many of you did that? You said, hey, talking about accuracy, maybe that's the correct answer. We're talking about subgroups, maybe that's the correct answer. We're talking about assessing value of treatments, maybe that's the correct answer. And some of you brought your knowledge of what an experimental treatment is in this, even though the passage doesn't talk about experimental treatments at all. What is your learning from this? 63% of people got it right, which is phenomenal, which is good. But you still had 37% who made a mistake. So those of you who made a mistake, what are you going to do to avoid making or to avoid repeating such a mistake? What are you guys going to do? Come on. Not bring outside knowledge. Okay. What else? Okay. Good. This is a purpose question. Limit your answer to what's discussed in the passage. Keep the words exactly what they are used for. All right, that's good. That's really good to know. All right. Question 4 says, why does the author mention patients' ages may also have a effect on treatment's efficacy? This is something you should have been able to pre-think fairly easily. Why? Because the context in which patients' ages is mentioned is to really show the value of broadening the range of participants. Okay. Okay. So my pre-thinking is it could really, it's an example of the value delivered by broadening the range of participants. Choice A. Let's see how you guys polled on this one first. But 60% of you chose choice D. That's good. Choice C was really popular, as was choice A. Choice A says identifying the most critical variable differentiating subgroups of patients. Again, we don't care about whether it's the most critical variable. Nowhere in the passage do we talk about this being the most critical variable. Okay. So choice A is wrong. Choice C, indicate why progressive diseases may require different treatments at different stages. Does the author mention anywhere why progressive diseases may require different treatments at different stages? And why means the reason. Does the author mention that anywhere in the passage? Yes, no. The author doesn't mention anywhere in the passage why progressive diseases may require different treatments. Choice D is correct. Illustrate a point about the value of enrolling a wide range of participants. Choice E says substantiated arguments about problems inherent in enrolling. This is exactly the opposite of what the author intends to do overall. But you can really see how there are certain answer choices which play on similar words, but they actually what they try and communicate is opposite to what's being communicated by the author in the passage. Okay, learning from question number 4. People who made mistakes. I want to see some learnings over here. While you present that, let's understand the gist of question number 5. Question number 5 says, according to the passage, which of the following describes the result of the way? Result means an outcome of the way in which trials are generally conducted. Now, this was a difficult question. Many of you were confused with this. Here is how you guys polled. Choices A and C were really popular, as were choices B and D. The only choice that we do not need to discuss is choice E. Okay. So, what is the result of the current way of doing things? There are two results. One is you have more costs. The second is application in real time is limited. You need to have a two-step process. Those are the two results of this. Okay. Choice A is the correct answer. I'm going to discuss why choice A is correct. But let's look at choice C. Choice C says the avoid the risk of overlooking variables that might affect their findings. I'm going to bring the passage once again. This is something that may seem tempting. Here, read the passage over here. FMN, such risk never entirely eliminable from research. If something's never entirely eliminable, can it be avoided? If you say that I avoided that road today, this means that you did not go on that road today. If a risk is never entirely eliminable, you cannot avoid that risk. You can minimize it, but you cannot avoid it. You can reduce the probability of it, but you cannot avoid that risk. Okay. This is why this is wrong. Now, why is choice A correct? Choice A is correct because you see and this is the value of understanding keywords, thereby escalating cost of data collection, storage, and analysis. Far more background information than is strictly required. That's the first piece. And the output of this is thereby escalating costs. That's the second piece. Okay. So because of this, let me just remove the bold. Choice A is the correct. It's a result of doing things the current way. Choice B says they sometimes compromise the accuracy of their findings by collecting and analyzing more information. Accuracy of findings is not mentioned anywhere, only costs are mentioned in the context of collecting more information. Choice D says because they analyze too much information, they overlook facts. Again, there's nowhere in the passage that the author says, hey, they because they collect a lot more information than is needed, they tend to overlook facts. Okay. Yes, avoid risk means an absence of risk. Think about using word avoid in any context. I avoided taking that thing. I avoided failing on the test, which means you did not fail on the test. The person who says felt irrelevant, remember there's a word likely to be irrelevant, which means there's a possibility. Remember, the word likely is used by many of folks to make something hard very tricky. If I say you're like not you're likely to not get admitted into Harvard, I'm actually protecting myself to really say this. You have a low possibility. Doesn't mean that you won't get into Harvard. You might get into Harvard. It's just that I'm assigning a probability number to it. This is, yes, this is the most challenging question. About 30% of you got it right. This is just as challenging as the inference question. Where does it say extra information is irrelevant? Let me actually bring the passage here. If you're collecting more information than is strictly required, then if you're doing more stuff than is strictly required, then isn't that irrelevant? If you end up solving more questions than are required, if you end up practicing more than it's required, then some of that practice is irrelevant, right? If you're spending more money than is required on a project, then some of that money is being wasted. Is that true? Yes or no? So it's likely to be irrelevant. Okay. Again, visualize the information that's been presented and match the visualization to your visualization from the passage. As long as they match, it's the correct option. Okay. So, what did you learn from this question? What did you learn from this question? Your learnings, guys. How are you going to get better at GMAT RC? Visualize answer choices. Okay, what else will you do? Come on. What did you learn in today's session? Focus on keywords. Keep notes. Okay. Read comprehensively. Understand linkage. Uh, Change the attitude. Focus on the crux of the author's messaging. Don't go with gut, go with data. I love that. I love that. I mean, these are all really good things. Differentiate between the author's and presenter's opinion. And you can see these are some really precious nuggets that you can take, and each one of you can learn from each other's learnings. I mean, overall, as a group, if you do that, you're going to be much more smart. Okay, and if you do that, there's no reason why you can't get to 90th or even 99th percentile ability in GMAT RC. And yes, it is possible. Okay. But the key to doing that is you've got to really learn how to apply these strategies. And to learn how to apply these strategies, you have to figure out, you have to read slowly. Okay. Um, that's really important. Also, when you make mistakes, leverage that data to figure out which are your natural areas of weakness. Each one of you has some natural inclinations to making mistakes. Figure those natural inclinations, figure out, and then work consciously to fix those inclinations, and you're going to find your accuracy improve. Okay. Now, a lot of people would say, "Hey, this is a time test, Rajat. What the hell are you talking about um, in terms of reading slowly?" So let me just show you some numbers, and then I'm going to show you some results. So if you read slowly, for most passages, you're going to take about 3 minutes to read a passage. Most passages are about 340, 350 words. And this is once you've mastered reading strategies, that is. When you go start tomorrow, you might end up taking 7 minutes to read a 350-word passage, or about at about 50 words a passage. And that's absolutely okay, because that's when you're learning such constructs. That's when you're building your visualization muscle. That's absolutely okay. But the key thing is, once you've read the passage, you should be able to answer most questions within a minute, which means should be able to answer 4 questions in about 4 minutes. So even if this number initially is about 7 minutes, that's okay, as long as you have high accuracy and you're able to achieve this. On the other, and essentially for most challenging passages, you may end up taking 4 minutes, and that's absolutely okay, because when the passage becomes more challenging, the questions tend to become easier. All right. Now, if you follow the speed reading approach, you skim through the passage, you spend about 2 minutes, but then you end up doing a lot of back and forth, and that takes a lot of time, that reduces your accuracy, and that's not as useful. Many of you probably follow this approach, which is a speed reading approach, where you skim through the passage, but then you have to do a lot of back and forth. And I can tell you, you don't take any less time. You actually have worse accuracy, and you have a lot more mental friction, which means as you kind of progress in the text, your accuracy continues to drop. Taking flowchart notes helped me get all right. That's perfect. That's visualization. Flowchart is a form of visualization. That's great. And this is, I think, would your statement would be a motivation. So, first of all, the person who said who's saying my cognitive skills are impaired. If and your mock scores, if you're an e-GMAT student, I'd love to see your Scholarinium scores and your Sigma X mock scores. If you're not an e-GMAT, yeah. So if your hard accuracy is upward at 60% or higher, then what you did on the actual test is an anomaly. If your hard accuracy is below 50%, then essentially you need to build those skills. For me, our Scholarinium data is actually the most um, sterile data that I can really see. Okay. So, and if you need help, write to the team. They'll analyze your account and they'll say what you should have gotten. They'll tell you right then and there. We do this for a living. We have 5 people who are dedicated to your success, and each one of them, that's all that they do. They're data analysts. But bottom line, what's important is, if you comprehend the passage, then you're going to find answering questions to be really, really simple. And which is why, if you look at data, GMAT Club does a really good job of organizing data chronologically. You would see that since 2021, we've accounted for about 60% of all success, which means all of these other companies combined accounted for a mere 40%. And some of these companies have way more students than we do. Okay. And again, this number is fairly close to 2,000 5-star reviews. A lot of people talk about the 5-star reviews. We have about 4 times as many 5-star reviews as most people do. Here's what a few other folks said. It says, you should read all the text, not just the first and the last paragraph. As long as you do that, it'll take you only 30 to 50 seconds. Anastasia went to Columbia. Okay. Nishant also went to Columbia. This guy took about 2 years to ace the GMAT. And the reason it took him 2 years is because it took him 2 years to figure this thing out. The moment he figured it out, he was able to get to a 740. And he's written one of the most motivating debriefs ever on GMAT Club. And because he was able to do this, is time to answer questions in that 740 attempt were just about 2 minutes per question. Dr. Rohit Singh Malang, he just graduated from IIM Ahmedabad. He went from a V27 um, when he was just rushing through the passage to a V41 when he actually just said, I'm going to figure out what's going on here rather than rushing through the passage. Yeah. And if you go to our YouTube channel, you actually right now have about 300 such instances where you'd see, you know, complete interviews of students where students talk about their journeys. These are not reviews of e-GMAT. These are, student journey flow charts where people really say, this is what I did first. This is what worked for me. This is what did not work for me. This is how I diagnosed what wasn't working. This is how I changed my approach. This is where I struggled as I changed my approach. And these are the stats that told me I was moving in the right direction. Okay. Um, so how do you go about building these skills? Really, really important. You don't need to be a voracious reader to be able to do that. Okay. It's about learning how to apply these reading strategies critically. All right. So, again, make sure you build these skills one at a time, and you avoid these mistakes one at a time. One of the first things you've got to do is make sure you go through the master comprehension course. Understand how we build long sentences. Understand how we deconstruct long sentences. Why? Because long sentences are the elemental aspect of an RC. Then figure out how to pause while, or where to pause while reading, and then learn these, apply these concepts in the reading strategies module. Make sure you get high scores on these practice quizzes. Then apply these learnings on the main point concept. And really, really important, don't rush through this. Don't just go through this and say, hey, I'm done with this. I was expected to do 4 activities. I'm done with 4. The goal over here is to internalize information. And one of the things that I've really seen is people who internalize information early on in the course, they end up doing the later and the more challenging parts a lot more quickly and with a lot higher accuracy. Okay. There are people who ace the GMAT when they start off, they spend as many as 30 minutes. Why? Because they analyze every aspect of it, they underline every keyword, they really say which other keywords would I have used if I wanted to convey the same meaning. The more you do that, the faster you improve. Okay. So again, focus on doing these things, and you're going to find that you can ace GMAT RC in about 10 days. When is the next RC webinar? We have one webinar on RC. Most people, once they understand the right approach, they don't need anything else. They go through the course in a self-paced manner. They look at their stats, they figure out where they're faltering, and they revise those portions. Okay. Don't see Jamboree here is not a thing. Um, I am a big proponent of self-paced learning. Jamboree is no longer a GMAT Club partner, so it would have been wrong to put them here. But again, the difference between a traditional test prep company and e-GMAT is the traditional test prep company focuses on telling you an approach to doing things and then giving you a ton of practice. We at e-GMAT are focused on building skills once with where you're focusing on one skill at a time, and we are focused on giving you feedback as you build those skills. So our goal really is, and our belief is, if you have the right skills, which means if you've learned the right concepts, if you teach you explicitly how to apply those concepts, if we teach you approaches that are scalable and not tricks, then and if we ensure that you learn those, which is where the personalized feedback comes in, and that can only be given using technology, then as you practice questions, you're going to improve a lot faster. The other thing that we want to make sure that we do is, if you're an e-GMAT student, please stick to Scholarinium. You want to make sure that you use solutions that we provide you. You don't want to use solutions that are out there, you know, Just in fact, even GMAC solution, because they don't put as much effort in writing solutions to their questions as they do in crafting those excellent questions themselves. Use solutions, because when you use e-GMAT solution, you figure out where you made a mistake, you figure out why you made a mistake. Once you define that causality, improving becomes a lot easier. um, CR webinar. I actually took a CR webinar last weekend. So I'm going to, as I share the recording, should be able to see the recording of the CR webinar as well. Also, if you can't find something that you need, you can always write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. Share that with everyone else. Okay. How much time would you recommend to devote in reading a passage? Um, right now, I'd recommend getting to that 90% understanding. If it takes you 8 minutes, do that, because getting to 90% understanding for 5 to 6 passages, as you do that, you're going to find as you do that, the time to read a passage reduces automatically. Let improvement be an outcome. All right, focus on that 90% comprehension, and you'll see the improvement happen automatically. All right. With that, let me share the session PDF. Here is the session PDF. Harshita says, can you go from 580 to 700 plus in by June 12th? It's going to be very challenging, Harshita. I would recommend that you push the test. And because if you push the test now, you're going to get some form of you're going to save some money. The second thing is, if you go ahead with the test, you get a really low score. um, I've seen people who do this, they end up resetting their preparation, which means the time that you're going to spend between now and June 12th, you're going to waste that time. That time is not going to go in any productive endeavor. So given what you know now, I would recommend push the test back by at least a month and a half. Okay. And then put in about 2.5 hours. Now, for those of you who need help with study plan, who are not e-GMAT students, who don't have access to our study plan tool, you can book a slot with a strategy expert to build a study plan. What do I recommend you study first, SC or RC or CR? I recommend doing master comprehension if you're an e-GMAT student first. Then you do SC if your SC ability is below 60th percentile. After that, you could do either CR or RC. Okay. Can our 2 month focus plan get you a 720 score? If you are, I mean, if you go to our buy page, it'll tell you how many point improvements. Our 2 month focus plan is typically for about 80 to 90 points of improvement. If you are in that 630, 640 bracket, absolutely it's the right plan for you. Also, if you're someone who's going to study 4 or 5 hours a day, then you can get to a seven you can get to a one third 120 130 point improvement in just 2 months. Again, the beauty of this is, you buy any course, you can always do monthly extensions beyond that, so you only pay for what you need. PC says, I had 680 in early March, then PC had surgery. I'm sorry to hear that. Your goal is to get to a 730 to 750 PC. Write to the team. They can help put you in the last mile push program, and then we can really see what needs to be done. I have to analyze data on your account to figure out what study plan, what should you focus your energy on, what metrics you should achieve to get to a 730. 710 to 750, is it possible within 3 weeks? I think yes, that is possible if you put in the time. If you're an EG matter, write to the team, and they'll build a study plan for you. They'll push you towards, again, the same thing that PC had. Paul says, I'm stuck with RC. I was earlier getting 90% accuracy. Now that's gone down. My timing is also getting worse. Again, Paul, what you are describing are symptoms. What we've talked about is, how do you do things right? And if you follow this approach, what you're going to really see is that, A, first of all, your accuracy should go up, but then every time you make a mistake, you have to attribute a cause to it. And because that, if you figure out why you're making those mistakes, you'd be able to address the symptoms that you're describing. So if you made mistakes, for example, in this webinar, then you probably know why you made those mistakes, and then if you know why you made those mistakes, then usually the solutions are simple. Are there Where are the previous recorded webinars? They're on our YouTube channel. You can, if you've subscribed to our YouTube channel, then you should be able to get to them. Here is the link to our YouTube channel over here. All right. With that, I want to thank everyone who joined me today. It was wonderful hosting this webinar. It was a pleasure having you. Again, we have a very comprehensive free trial. Make sure you make use of it. If you like it, consider buying the course. We have a fantastic deal going on right now. Also, if you have questions, you can write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. Um, and I think I or someone from my team would help you, would respond to your doubts right then and there. Q50 with 50% verbal. Can you get to 720 plus by the first week of July? Um, 50% as V28. Q50 and 720 means you need about a 10-point improvement because you need V38 on a Q50. Can you get there by first week of July? Maybe. I mean, essentially, what you're looking at is about 100 to 120 hours of effort in about 30 days. That's about 4 hours of effort a day. If you're a full-time working professional, becomes challenging. Let me just be very clear. But I mean, you're looking about 120 hours. That's what you're looking at. So yeah, write to the team, figure out what you need to do. That's but about 120, 130 hours is what we're looking at. If you can put in that much effort in a week, in a month, then yes, you can get there. Again, the beauty of our system is that you have metrics. If you hit those metrics, you know you will get there. If you don't hit those metrics, you know that you won't get there. So it's not that you'd be taking a shot in the dark. Okay. All right, guys. With that, I want to thank everyone, and I'll see you on egmat.com. And if you still have questions about how long you need, um, then book a study plan session. Okay, Paul has a question. If you take the GMAT now, will the current GMAT be irrelevant for 2025 intake? No, it won't be. I actually answered this question um, early on. So 2025 intake, you're still okay. 2026 is where I'd be a bit more wary. But I think this question. I answered this question because I answered this question for a student fairly recently. If you go and read this, you should be able to know more about it. Okay. All right. With that, thank you very much and good luck for